Welcome to Solve and Serve using human-centered design. Just a little bit about me. My name is Juliana Good. I use she or they pronouns. I am a graduate student at the University of New Hampshire. I work for the UNH Changemaker Collaborative. Some of you may know it as the Center for Social Innovation and Enterprise. We were absorbed into the Sustainability Institute last summer, along with civic and community engagement. Hi, Megan. And we are very excited to be able to collaborate and have all of our shared resources under this new kind of position. So that is a little bit of my background. So when we're talking about problem solving, I think it's helpful to have a good idea of some ways that we can categorize problems. And one really handy tool for doing that is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now, in all of the work that you do, you can probably identify with one of these 17 goals, or probably more of them, in the missions of the nonprofits or the agencies that you work for. And so I think keeping these in mind as we go through and just kind of thinking about which of these you're focused on tackling in your own work is a great way to kind of not only center your work, but also find others who might be working in similar areas. So just a little bit more about what we do with Changemaker Education, or the Changemaker Collaborative at UNH. We deal in social innovation, and this is a term you might have heard thrown around, but essentially we're looking at measuring social change and including not just the feel-good and ideological stuff, which is really important, but also some of the metrics that are important for measuring financial sustainability, scaling an organization, putting your solutions within a system of other solutions. And so kind of bringing the left brain side of things into all of the mission-centered work that we all do. So our mission is to inspire, train, and support the next generation of change makers. And so we work with students at UNH. So we engage with them and give them opportunities to get experiential learning experiences. That was a silly phrase, but internships, workshops, things that people can do to really kind of apply the skills that they're learning in their classes into the real world. And then we engage with faculty to support them in helping to deliver those opportunities to students. And we work with businesses and NGOs to give students those opportunities. We partner with them. We send interns to all kinds of organizations in New England. And we're very fortunate to have the support of a lot of different organizations. So that's kind of our whole deal. Now, to get into what we're talking about today, we are all about human-centered design. And so I want to go over just kind of a quick rundown. There are people who study this their whole careers. I've read dissertations about it. This is like the Cliff Notes version of human-centered design. So there's kind of three main tenets that I think of, that we as a center think of with human-centered design. So the first one is believing that all problems, even the huge problems that freak us out on the news every day, are solvable. If you believe a problem is solvable, then that's one less barrier you have to being able to solve it, right? If you know it's not impossible, then you know that you can do it. The second one and the third one kind of go together. So believing that the people who face those problems every day in the community are the ones who are going to have the most knowledge about how to solve those problems. So we see in the past a lot of really well-meaning charities kind of throwing money at different communities of people without really assessing what it is they need and what kind of support they need to either solve a problem that they're facing or to just kind of thrive in general. And so we have to work with those community members to figure out what they actually need and how we can design solutions to meet those needs. So in order to create a useful design that has a real impact, we kind of meet in this little triple Venn diagram in the middle of desirability, viability, and feasibility. So we'll start with desirability. If people don't like it, they aren't going to use it. If they're not incentivized to use it, then it doesn't make an impact, because if people aren't using your solution, then you're not going to get any impact out of it. Viability. Is it possible that this solution will last? Will it stand the test of time? Do we have the materials? Do we have the buy-in from a community to make it so that this is a realistic expectation? And then feasibility is more about the actual physical and financial restraints that you have. So, you know, giving everybody $1 million would be awesome, but it's not necessarily feasible if you're a small nonprofit. So coming up with solutions that are within your means, but that also can create a real impact is what feasibility is all about. And so when you get all three of those things together, then you've probably got a useful innovation. I want to go over a short case study that I think really kind of exemplifies just kind of the human-centered design ideology. So if you've ever noticed, toothbrushes for kids have really fat handles. And prior to 1996, there was no difference between kids' toothbrushes and adult toothbrushes, other than that they were a little bit shorter. And so the toothbrush company Oral-B approached a design firm called IDEA, which you should check out in your spare time. They do really great human-centered design work, to design new toothbrushes for kids that are going to work better for them. So the IDEA team watched kids brush their teeth. And this is normally the time where I would ask a group of people I was standing in front of physically, what do you think they noticed? But because that's really hard to do on Zoom, I'm just going to tell you. So kids hold toothbrushes differently from adults. Adults have more fine motor skills, you know. We've developed all these teeny tiny muscles in our fingers and in our joints. And so we don't necessarily grab onto things with white knuckles the way that kids do. Kids grab toothbrush with just their whole fist. So by having a thicker handle, kids are able to, you know, get a better grip on the toothbrush and actually use it the way that it's intended to use to get their mouths clean. So I just like that example because it's pretty simple, and it just gives you a great example of showing how observing and really listening to the population of people that you're trying to serve in your design can make a huge difference and help you come to some really out-of-the-box conclusions. So before we get into the main meat of this presentation, which is this really fun activity that I have for you all, I'm wondering if you have any questions about human-centered design. Now, if you can help me out, I am actually deaf, and the only way that I can work on Zoom is if I am watching your lips reading happening, and I can't do that because there's so dang many of you, which is great. If you could enter your questions in the chat box, I will answer them. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. No one's got any questions? Thank you, Allie. Yes. All right. It seems like I have done a decent job of explaining things so far. Either that or you're totally overwhelmed. We're going to find out which. So this activity is one that we do with students at UNH all the time. It was originally designed by the Stanford D School, the design school. And they are a center at Stanford that specializes specifically in human-centered design. So they have a lot of great materials, and we love using this activity because it's simple, yet very profound. So normally what I would have you do in the real world is turn to the person next to you and partner up. However, because that's not possible, we're going to split into a bunch of breakout rooms. Now, because we have more than 100 participants, there might be a few rooms that have 3 people instead of 2, because Zoom only allows a maximum of 50 breakout rooms. But I'm going to go over a few directions with you before we do that breakout. But just know that you'll be randomly paired up with somebody, because that's what design is all about, right? It's really getting to know the needs of people that you might not necessarily know personally or have a lot of experience with or have knowledge of, you know, their story or their needs. So, why isn't this working now? There we go. So this is a very chit-chatty activity. So the prompt is to redesign the gift-giving or getting experience for your partner. Now, this could be a confusing prompt to some people, so I'm going to explain. Let's say that you, for Christmas, always get socks from your Aunt Janet, okay? And you're like wicked tired of just getting socks. You have so many socks, they're no longer useful to you. What could you design to break that potential communication barrier, or what could you design to better communicate your needs in the gifts that you want to receive? Conversely, if you feel like you get good gifts and you feel like you're a bad gift giver, you can go the route of trying to design something that will help you better understand what types of things people might like to receive as gifts. So that's kind of the end game for this process. But I'm going to take you through the first couple of steps so that I don't have to bring you out of breakout rooms in between every step. So this is where the pen and paper is handy, or if you just want to take notes so you can keep track of this. So the first step is just going to be to chat with your partner about this prompt. Really open-ended. You know, you want to do really open-ended questions, and it's important when you're interviewing that you're doing more listening than talking, right? So you can certainly ask questions, but this is not a time to jump in with your own story or thoughts or experiences. You're just trying to get as much information as you can from them about this topic. And then we're basically going to do the same thing again, but you're going to want to dig deeper with your partner. So ask questions about the questions that you asked. Get really specific. It might feel like a really long time to interview somebody for 4 minutes, but that's the point, is to try to think of questions that you might not normally ask and that are really going to help you get a deep understanding of their feelings about this topic. So, to recap, you're talking to your partner about the gift-giving experience. Or the gift-getting experience. Interview deeply, listen more than you're talking. I'm just going to check our chat here to make sure that we don't have any questions about this specifically. We have a couple people who are asking clarifying questions. I know this is a really abstract prompt. So to clarify, the prompt is, you are looking to find out from your partner how to improve either their gift giving or their gift getting process. So it's not about the actual gifts, it's about how to communicate the needs that they may have in either thinking about giving gifts or thinking about getting gifts? It will make more sense once you start talking about it, I promise. Everyone always looks at me like I have 5 heads when I give them this prompt in like an undergrad business class, but then they have fun with it. All right, I know that must have been kind of a weird activity. So what I would like you to do is have just share your thoughts in the chat, and I will read some of them and we can chat a little. What was the most challenging thing about those first steps of the activity? It was awkward to get started. So Linda Quebec says it was awkward to get started because we didn't know each other. And a lot of people are talking about getting the first person started chatting and thinking of follow-up questions. Megan says, trying not to think of follow-up questions without trying to jump into problem solving. So yeah, I think these are all really common things that we experience when we're in the first few steps of the human-centered design process. It can be hard to know where to start. And when you're so focused in solution mode, sometimes you miss the details that are important to consider along the way. And so it's good to kind of go into a meeting that you might have with somebody, you know, maybe a client that you're working with, you know, somebody that your organization serves, with a few of these kind of general questions kind of in the back burner of your mind, so that you can just kind of pull them out to really get to know the other person and kind of what their needs are. So good. I'm glad to see that you guys were able to chit chat and get something out of that. And I know I'm sorry about tech issues. This is really so much more fun when we can do it in person, but c'est la vie. So the next couple of steps of this, we're not going to have to go back into breakout rooms. This is just going to be time for you to reflect on what you discussed with your partner and turn those observations into a more narrow statement of the problem that they're having, and some statements on how you might solve that problem. So going back to our PowerPoint here, the first thing I want you to do is just jot down the needs that your partner has. So the things that they're trying to do, the things that they expressed are an issue for them, just kind of paring that down into a few short bullet points. And then insights, so things that you learned about your partner's feelings, things that you learned about maybe their worldview that might influence how you design for them. For example, if you learn that your partner doesn't really use social media, then you probably don't want to include social media as an aspect in your solution. So we're going to take 3 minutes to do that. And Leslie, I'll start the timer for this one and just let folks know when we are done. So again, no breakout rooms for this step. You're just going to take some time to reflect, jot down, and do a good think. So we'll have 3 minutes for that, and that starts now. So the next thing to do, now that you've pared things down a little bit, is to make it a tight problem statement. So this is where you may want to write down kind of this template statement, because it's hard to see on this slide. So you're gonna say your partner's name. So let's say Susie needs a way to blank. So whatever your user's need is. And then you can add something to that. So she needs to do this because, or she needs to do this but, or she needs to do this and surprisingly. So again, it's your partner's name, needs a way to do whatever they need to do, and then you add some additional insights to that. So it should just be one sentence, which can be tricky to pare it all down to that, but you can do it. We're gonna have we'll take 2 minutes to do that, and I will start the timer now. Okay, I'm seeing some great problem statements in the chat. I'm going to read a few. So let's see. Blank needs to know that the gift she is giving is something that is needed or wanted and will be utilized. So that's a really succinct statement, and great job, Peggy, for coming up with that one. Other people mentioned wanting to make sure that gifts were memorable and meaningful for the gift receiver. That's a really good one. Let's see, if what you give is equal in quality to what you receive from the other person. So yeah, these are all really great, sorry, I'm trying to read and talk at the same time. Really great insights is what I was trying to say. And now that we have these kind of condensed statements, we can work on generating some solutions. So it says to sketch at least 5 radical ways to meet your user's needs. Now this means don't worry about cost. Don't worry about if it needs to be on Venus. I know we discussed feasibility and viability earlier, but the ideation stage is not really the place for constraint. Just put down the first 5 ideas that pop into your head, no matter how crazy they seem, because you can generate hundreds of bad ideas, and that is what will lead you to coming up with a good idea, or an idea that's workable for the solution you're trying to generate. So if you aren't in a position to sketch, and honestly, when I do this activity, I'm like not a good drawer. So I'll usually just jot down a note of verbally what I want the idea to be, and just sketch 5 or as many as you can within the time. Radical can be as crazy as you want, ways to address that problem statement that you wrote in the last step, and you'll have 4 minutes to do this. That time starts now. Okay. I have been very much enjoying the solutions that you've been sharing in the chat. Sean said that you can regift the unwanted candy to your spouse on the next holiday. That sounds like a rather specific scenario, but you know what? Waste not, want not, you know what I mean? Some other really great solutions I saw. Let me find that. Where did it go? Oh, ask for a list of favorite gifts they've received in the last 5 or 10 years. I think that's a fun one because that can be just like a general conversation starter question and it doesn't seem too obvious. You know, maybe if their birthday's like coming up, then they might guess what your motive is a little bit. But I really like that idea. Someone said, listen more, talk less. Yes, this is a great, great motto to follow always. This one's very creative. A tool modeled after Elfster, intended for Secret Santa type gift exchanges that matches the gift giver and gift getter styles. I have never heard of Elfster, but I'm going to check that out because that is very fun. Other people went a much more direct route. Make me a list. That is certainly one way to get it done. I think some of these solutions will depend on the context and if you're really going for subtlety or not. Poke good-natured fun like baking a sock-shaped cake for the sock gifting aunt. That's, I appreciate that also. Great. I thank you all for sharing your ideas and for participating in this. This is very fun to see what solutions you've come up with. Now, normally we would go on to this next step, which is getting back into breakout rooms and sharing your solutions with your partners. However, I really want to focus our last 15-ish minutes on how you can apply these principles to your organizations, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? And because this is kind of an abstract topic, I want to make sure I kind of bring us back to earth here. I'm just going to check the chat one more time to make sure that people are good to go. Good stuff, good stuff. Okay, so these are some slides that we'll skip for now. There's some additional resources here that show you a lot of examples of organizations using design thinking, human-centered design. I can have Leslie or Michaela or somebody share these links with you, or I can drop them in the chat afterward. But yeah, let's talk about how we might implement some of these ideas into the work that we're doing. So I will give you an example. So I may have mentioned before, that may have been when we were in breakout rooms, but I'm actually deaf. I'm late deaf, so I have all of my speech development happened when I was hearing, but I've lost about 70% of my hearing over the course of my life, and I wear hearing aids, and that makes life easier. But I tell you this because prior to losing the majority of my hearing towards the beginning of college, I was actually very interested in special education and disability policy. But I was not going about it the right way. I was working with people who work with disabled people instead of working with people who have disabilities and who experience them every day. And therefore I was learning kind of a watered down version of those experiences and not going directly to the source. And now that I live with a disability and now that I, have to constantly ask for accommodations and, constantly be working a little bit harder to access the information that I need, I understand a little bit better, what it's like to not have your needs met and to just not feel like people are working with you. Because I think at the end of the day, people don't necessarily want to, this is just my opinion, you can take it with a grain of salt, but I think people want to be part of coming up with a solution with you, rather than having things thrown at them that they don't have stake in. And to me, that's what human-centered design is all about. So some ways to implement that into your organization might be inviting some of your clients or the people you serve to your board meetings, getting their feedback on the services that you're providing them, getting their input to make sure that their needs are being met. It might be going out and, if you're in a leadership position, going out and working a shift with some of your kind of boots on the ground volunteers, learning, what that day looks like, what resources they might need, and just always asking questions to everyone at all levels of your organization, from, the people on the executive board to, the people that you're serving, because at the end of the day, we all have to work together to generate solutions that are going to work. It's not enough to postulate and to just read the experiences of kind of tangentially related people. It's not enough to only be talking to special ed teachers. In my case, that was what I was doing, only talking to special ed teachers and not talking to the students in special education classes. So it's important that you are working not only with your team and designing around, you know, your needs and around your constraints, but also that you're working with your constituents, with the people that you serve, to make sure that their voices are heard and they're a part of the solution generation process. And I think there's a lot of organizations that do that really well. I always blank on organization names when I'm in the middle of giving a presentation, but I will post the resources to give you some examples. And then this slide right here that we're on, these online courses, these are all free. The Rochester Institute of Technology course is only not free if you want the actual certificate to be able to apply it towards a degree or to like get the actual accreditation, but to just get the info, it's free. And these workshops will take you deeper kind of into the design thinking process. And I think they can be really useful. So with that, we've got about 7 minutes left. I would like to open up the chat for questions, and I will scroll through and answer as many as I can in that amount of time. So Donna asks, what are some of the solutions that you've been involved with in New Hampshire? So I'm actually working on one that's very exciting right now. So I guess to describe, we're all familiar probably with the Black Lives Matter movement. I very firmly believe in it. And I was going to protests and noticing that a lot of them were not accessible. So there were no interpreters. The march routes were not wheelchair friendly. There were no bathrooms. You know, people weren't being told to wear masks. And all of these things are, you know, unfortunately make on-the-ground protests inaccessible for people with disabilities. So I wanted to come up with a protest that was accessible. And with the help of the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities, with Vanessa Blaze, who's here right now, thank you, Vanessa, and with my my co-organizer, Dr. Deborah Okormala, who's really involved with the Poor People's Campaign and a ton of other activism in the state, we have designed and garnered a lot of support for an accessible protest, which is taking place this Friday at 3 p.m. In Portsmouth. We will have interpreters, we will have a wheelchair-friendly route, we'll have water, snacks, water bowls for service dogs. We'll have peacekeepers there to help people out. We've got a bathroom we can use. So all of that stuff. I'm also working on a high school curriculum. That's my actual job this summer, is working on a high school curriculum to teach high school students about human-centered design and how they can use that to solve issues that they're passionate about. So that is my experience in problem solving thus far. I am always looking for collaborators, always looking to use my experiences for good. Thank you, Vanessa, for sharing that in the chat. So yeah, that's what's up. I want to make sure I did not miss any other questions while I was gabbing away there. I see lots of thank yous, lots of very nice things. Thank you, thank you. You're all so nice. I appreciate you so much. Doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop. Oh, Sean is asking for my contact information. Yes, I will put that in the chat. So my email address is juligood5@gmail.com. You can email me there anytime. If you would like to set up a Zoom call or a phone call, I'm very open to that. Find me on Facebook, find me on Twitter. I'm all there. And it looks like we are about at the point to wrap up. If anyone else has any other questions, you can dump them in the chat real quick. But aside from that, I want to thank you all so much for coming and for participating in this weird and wacky activity. I hope you got something out of it. And again, feel free to contact me at any point, juliegood5@gmail.com. I would love to chat with you and learn more about all the wonderful work that you're doing. And I appreciate you all. So thank you so much and have a great rest of your day and a great rest of the conference.